Hey guys! Tonight we're going to journey back in time. Way back to a sprawling city built on a lake, where gardens weren't just pretty patches of green, but the very pulse of an entire civilization. Imagine waking up to the gentle lapping of water against your chinampa. The air thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming marigolds. A cacophony of exotic bird calls just outside your window. You might think you're dreaming. But this was the reality for many in ancient Tenochtitlan. We're talking about the Aztecs, people who, despite living on a lake, managed to become master gardeners, turning swamps into fertile ground. It's a feat of ingenuity that would make even the most dedicated urban gardener blush. Honestly, you probably won't survive the sheer tranquility of this deep dive into historical horticulture. But hey, a man can dream. Right. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're up for it, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always fun to see where you're all drifting off from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Now, imagine yourself standing on the shores of Lake Texcoco. Not a vast expanse of concrete and smog like today, but a shimmering, living body of water, teeming with life. It's not just water, though. It's the lifeblood of an empire. You're looking across what seems like an endless marsh, but you sense a subtle order, a human hand shaping the wilderness. This is where the story of Aztec gardens truly begins. Not with grand designs, but with necessity. With the very human urge to survive and thrive. The Aztec people, or more accurately, the Mexica people, as they called themselves, arrived in the Valley of Mexico relatively late compared to other established groups. They were, in essence, latecomers to a crowded party, and all the prime agricultural land was already taken. So, what do you do when you're boxed in by powerful neighbors and your dinner plans involve a lot of foraging? You get creative. Their earliest gardening efforts, you see, weren't about roses and manicured lawns. They were about survival. You're observing a small group, perhaps a family, pushing poles into the marshy ground, weaving reeds, and piling up mud. This isn't just mud, it's rich. Organic sediment dredged from the lakebed itself, packed with nutrients. They're not planting a single seed yet, but laying the groundwork for something revolutionary. This primitive, but incredibly effective, method of land reclamation allowed them to slowly, painstakingly, carve out patches of arable land from the watery expanse. Think of it as the ultimate DIY project. Except instead of a wobbly bookshelf, you're building an entire civilization's food supply. The mainstream historical fact here is that the Aztecs, specifically the Mexica, settled on an island in Lake Texcoco because it was considered undesirable land by other established city-states. forcing them to innovate their agricultural techniques. This pressure cooker environment forged their ingenuity. They weren't just building gardens, they were building their future, one mud pile at a time. You can almost feel the aches in their backs, the sting of mosquito bites, as they relentlessly worked to transform this watery wasteland. It's a testament to sheer human grit. Isn't it now? For a quirky tidbit, some scholars believe that the Aztecs' choice of the island in Lake Texcoco wasn't just out of desperation, but also because a prophecy foretold they should settle where they saw an eagle perched on a prickly pear cactus, devouring a snake, a sight that, incredibly, appeared on their chosen island. So, perhaps a touch of divine guidance mixed with a lot of practical ingenuity led them to their soggy destiny. You can almost imagine the collective sigh of relief, or perhaps a frustrated groan, when they realized their prophesied home was essentially a glorified swamp. Well, at least it's unique, you might hear someone mutter. As you continue to observe, you start to notice the meticulousness of their work. They're not just haphazardly tossing dirt around. They're constructing raised beds, often bordered by woven fences of reeds and sticks, designed to elevate the soil above the constant dampness. This isn't just about growing food. It's about control, about imposing order on a chaotic, watery world. The early Aztec gardener, you realize, was part engineer, part botanist, part mud wrestler. Imagine trying to explain your job description at a modern-day career fair. Oh, I specialize in aquatic soil deposition and sustained botanical yield in unstable deltaic environments. Sounds much more impressive than, I dig up mud. Historians still argue whether these early agricultural innovations truly predated the full-scale development of the Chinampas, or if they were concurrent, developing in parallel as the population grew and the need for more food became increasingly urgent. Was it a gradual evolution, a slow refinement of technique over centuries, or a sudden burst of genius born from necessity? The answer, like much of history, is likely a bit of both, a messy, organic progression rather than a neat, linear one. You can almost hear the whispered debates among the ancient cultivators, discussing the optimal height for a raised bed, the best type of reed for reinforcement, or whether adding a bit of lake muck from that particular spot would make the squash grow bigger. It's not so different from modern gardeners swapping tips on compost mixes. Is it except their compost might have been slightly more aquatic? These foundational efforts, these initial struggles to coax sustenance from the lake, laid the groundwork for everything that came after. You see the persistence, the relentless adaptation. They learned what grew well in the perpetually damp soil, what required more drainage, and how to utilize the rich, silty bottom of the lake as a renewable resource. They weren't just farmers. They were hydro-engineers before the term even existed. You can picture them, squinting into the setting sun, their hands caked with mud, contemplating the next patch of marshland to transform. The silent, steady rhythm of their labor was the true bedrock of their empire, far more profound than any grand temple or warrior's triumph. It was the quiet, persistent effort to make life possible, one meticulously constructed plot of land at a time. And in this quiet, repetitive work, you start to feel the sleepiness settle in, a gentle hum of historical industry lulling you deeper into relaxation. You're still there, on the shores of Lake Texcoco, perhaps a little dozier now, as the gentle rhythm of ancient life unfolds before you. Having witnessed the sheer human will to wrestle land from water, you're about to see the culmination of that effort, the Chinampas. These weren't just gardens. They were, in essence, floating farms, a revolutionary agricultural system that allowed the Aztecs to sustain a massive urban population in a most unlikely setting. Imagine trying to grow enough food for millions of people on a swamp. Sounds like a terrible plan. Right. Unless, of course, you're an Aztec. The Chinampa system is, in many ways, the crown jewel of Aztec ingenuity. You see the early, smaller raised beds evolving into something far grander, far more systematic. Picture long, rectangular plots of land, typically about 30 feet wide and up to 300 feet long, separated by narrow canals. These weren't truly floating, in the sense of drifting about, but rather artificial islands built up from layers of mud, decaying vegetation, and lakebed sediment. They were anchored by the roots of willow trees planted along their edges, creating a remarkably stable and incredibly fertile platform. It's like a giant, meticulously organized lasagna, but instead of pasta and cheese, it's mud and reeds, and the delicious outcome is corn and beans. A mainstream historical fact you absolutely need to know about Chinampas is that they were incredibly productive, yielding up to 7 harvests a year for some crops, a remarkable output that significantly contributed to the Aztecs' ability to feed their burgeoning population. This isn't just a gardening hack, it's a food security marvel. Think about that for a moment. 7 harvests. Most modern farms struggle to get 2. It's almost enough to make you consider trading your suburban backyard for a lakeside mud patch. Almost. Now, for a quirky tidbit about these watery wonders, the Aztecs would often use canoes, not just for transportation between the Chinampas, but also to collect human waste from the city, which was then used as fertilizer. Yes, you heard that right. They were pioneers of sustainable waste management, long before "going green" became a hashtag. So, the beauty of the gardens was, in part, thanks to what some might politely call night soil. It certainly puts a new spin on the phrase farm to table. Doesn't it, though? Perhaps don't dwell too long on that thought as you drift off. You can almost feel the gentle bob of a canoe as you glide through the narrow waterways between the Chinampas. The air is surprisingly still, the water reflecting the sky like a mirror. on either side. Vibrant green stalks of corn stretch towards the sun, interspersed with climbing beans and squash. A riot of life. You might spot a farmer kneeling, meticulously tending to a young seedling, their movements efficient and practiced. The constant presence of water in the canals meant that the plants were always well irrigated, and the rich, organic matter from the lakebed provided a continuous supply of nutrients. It was a self-sustaining system, almost magical in its efficiency. Historians still argue whether the invention of the Chinampa system was a gradual evolution, a slow refinement over generations, or a more sudden, revolutionary leap in agricultural technology driven by intense population pressure. Was there one brilliant mind, a forgotten Aztec agricultural engineer, who first conceived of this grand design? Or was it a collective, communal effort, a slow accumulation of knowledge shared amongst generations of diligent farmers? The truth, as ever, is probably somewhere in the muddy middle. Perhaps it was a eureka moment followed by centuries of incremental improvements. Much like how your smart devices seem to get just a tiny bit smarter with every update. The sheer scale of the Chinampas around Tenochtitlan was astonishing. You're not looking at a few isolated plots. You're witnessing a vast, interconnected network of land and water, a living tapestry that stretched for miles. Imagine flying over ancient Tenochtitlan, not in a noisy airplane, but perhaps on the back of a very large, very quiet, prehistoric bird. Below you, the geometric patterns of the Chinampas would be a breathtaking sight, a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. Each plot, each narrow canal, represents countless hours of labor, a silent symphony of effort that fed an empire. The construction wasn't simple, though it appears so seamless now. You'd observe workers, sometimes whole families, dredging mud from the canal bottoms with long poles and nets, piling it onto the platforms. This constant dredging served a dual purpose, deepening the canals for better navigation and providing fresh, nutrient-rich soil for the Chinampas. It was a continuous cycle of creation and renewal. The layers of vegetation, often water hyacinths and other aquatic plants, would decompose, adding further fertility to the soil. A natural composting system on a grand scale. You almost expect to hear the gentle thud of mud being dropped, a rhythmic sound that would have accompanied life on the lake for centuries. And what did they grow? Not just the staples like corn, beans, and squash, which formed the caloric backbone of their diet, but also a dizzying array of other crops. Think chilies for spice, tomatoes for tang, amaranth for nutrition, and a variety of flowers for religious ceremonies and aesthetic pleasure. It was a vibrant agricultural ecosystem, a polyculture that maximized space and yield. You're seeing biodiversity in action, a testament to their deep understanding of the natural world. They weren't just growing food, they were cultivating a way of life, a deep connection to the earth and water that sustained them. The silence here, broken only by the gentle sounds of nature and human labor, is profound. It's the quiet hum of existence, the gentle lull of productivity that leads you deeper into a state of serene contemplation. This was truly boring history at its most productive. As the gentle lapping of water from the chinampas continues to lull you, you're now drifting into the bustling heart of the Aztec Empire, Tenochtitlan itself. Imagine a city that defied logic, a sprawling metropolis built on an island in the middle of a lake. It sounds like a logistical nightmare. A place where you'd spend half your day just trying not to get your sandals wet. But for the Aztecs, it was home. And, crucially, it was a city where gardens were intricately woven into its very fabric. This wasn't just a place with a few parks. The entire city was a testament to the power of green spaces. A seamless blend of urban sprawl and verdant productivity. You can picture yourself gliding through a grand canal, perhaps in a small, flat-bottomed boat laden with fresh produce. On either side, impressive stone temples rise into the humid air, their intricate carvings hinting at the spiritual devotion of the people. But beneath the shadow of these monumental structures, you don't find barren streets. Instead, you see a vibrant tapestry of green. Courtyards burst with flowering plants. Residential compounds feature small, practical kitchen gardens. And along the canals, even more chinampas extend like green fingers into the urban core. It's an urban planner's dream, a city that breathes with the life of its plants. A mainstream historical fact is that Tenochtitlan, at its peak, was one of the largest cities in the world, with a population estimated to be well over 200,000, possibly even up to 400,000. To feed such a massive population without relying solely on tribute from conquered lands was a monumental task, and the integration of gardens directly within the city, especially the chinampas extending from its edges, was absolutely crucial to this logistical triumph. It was a self-sustaining urban ecosystem, a concept that modern city planners are only now desperately trying to rediscover. Imagine if your local supermarket was literally built into your neighborhood, constantly replenishing itself. Now for a quirky tidbit to manage the fresh water supply and protect the city from devastating floods. The Aztecs constructed an immense dike, or albarradon, across Lake Texcoco. This engineering marvel, stretching for miles, separated the freshwater section where Tenochtitlan was located from the brackish parts of the lake. This massive undertaking wasn't just about flood control. It also ensured that the fresh water vital for their chinampas and drinking supply remained uncontaminated. So, the green heartbeat of the city was protected by a literal wall of human ingenuity. It makes your city's stormwater drain system seem a bit pedestrian, doesn't it? As you continue your silent observation, You notice the distinct types of gardens integrated into the urban landscape. There are the vast chinampa fields at the city's periphery, the true agricultural engines. Then, within the residential districts, you see smaller, more intimate plots. You peer into a typical Aztec home compound, perhaps belonging to a moderately wealthy family. Within the enclosed walls, a small, well-tended garden thrives. It's not just for beauty, it's immensely practical. You might see a small patch of corn, a few chili plants, herbs for cooking and medicine, and perhaps some vibrant marigolds used in ceremonies. These were private larders, green pharmacies, and peaceful retreats all rolled into one. It's like having your own little urban farm, but without the pesky property taxes or the need to post pictures of your organic kale on social media. Historians still argue whether the precise layout and integration of gardens within Tenochtitlan were a result of a highly centralized, top-down urban planning strategy, or a more organic, bottom-up development driven by individual household needs and communal practices. Was it a grand master plan conceived by a visionary ruler, or simply the natural evolution of a populace adapting ingeniously to its unique environment? The truth, as often happens, probably lies in a fascinating interplay between official decree and grassroots innovation. Perhaps the rulers encouraged it, but the people truly made it happen, much like how we're encouraged to recycle. But it's really our collective nagging that gets it done. The concept of a green city wasn't a modern buzzword for the Aztecs. It was their reality. You breathe in the surprisingly fresh air, a stark contrast to what you might expect from a large, ancient city. The pervasive greenery would have acted as a natural air filter, a cooling system, and a constant reminder of the life-giving connection to the earth. The sounds, too, would be different. Less the clatter of carts on cobblestones, more the rustle of leaves, the hum of insects, and the distant chirping of birds. It's a sensory experience that speaks of a profound balance between human activity and the natural world. You see evidence of specialized gardens, too. Near temples, you might find sacred gardens, filled with specific flowers and plants used in rituals and offerings. You can almost smell the incense mingling with floral scents as priests move through these hallowed spaces. And in the grand palaces, as we'll explore more deeply, were the truly spectacular botanical gardens, designed not just for utility, but for pure aesthetic delight and the display of imperial power. These were the showcases, the living museums of Aztec botanical prowess. The seamless integration of these green spaces meant that food was never far away. You wouldn't have had to travel miles to a market. Fresh produce was often just a few steps from your door or a short canoe ride away. This level of food accessibility, combined with the immense productivity of the Chinampas, meant a remarkably consistent and varied diet for the citizens of Tenochtitlan. It allowed them to focus on other pursuits: art, religion, warfare, knowing their basic needs were met by the diligent hands of their gardeners. This silent, persistent work of cultivation was the hidden strength of their mighty empire, the quiet hum of growth beneath the grand pronouncements and ceremonies. It's a testament to the idea that sometimes the most profound impacts come from the most unassuming places, like a quiet garden in the heart of a bustling city. And with that thought, you feel the gentle pull of sleep, drifting deeper into the green heart of ancient Tenochtitlan. As the soft, imaginary breeze from the ancient Chinampas continues to caress your mind, you shift your focus from the grand scale of urban integration to something more personal, yet equally profound: the gardens as status symbols. In Tenochtitlan, a garden wasn't just a place to grow your dinner. It was a carefully curated statement, a whispered boast, a quiet display of wealth, power, and refined taste. You might think of it like owning a luxury car today, but instead of gleaming chrome, it was about vibrant petals and meticulously trimmed foliage. You're now walking through a quieter, more exclusive part of the city, perhaps a residential district where the noble families, the Pippleton, resided. The walls surrounding their compounds are higher, more imposing, but through intricately carved doorways, you catch glimpses of breathtaking beauty. Here, the utilitarian aspects of gardening, while still present, often took a back seat to aesthetics and exoticism. You see not just corn and beans, but rare orchids, fragrant vanilla vines, and colorful birds of paradise. Plants that would have been brought from distant, conquered lands as tribute or through specialized trade networks. A mainstream historical fact is that the Aztec elite, particularly the Tlatoani rulers and high-ranking nobles, invested heavily in their personal gardens, filling them with rare and beautiful plants, exotic animals, and elaborate water features. These gardens served as private sanctuaries, places for contemplation, entertainment, and the display of their immense prestige. It was like having your own personal botanical garden and zoo, all rolled into one, long before modern zoos and botanical gardens were even a twinkle in anyone's eye. Now, for a quirky tidbit, some Aztec nobles kept collections of unusual or deformed individuals, including albinos and hunchbacks, alongside their exotic plants and animals, viewing them as curiosities or omens. While a deeply uncomfortable historical fact from a modern perspective, it highlights the Aztec elite's penchant for collecting the rare and remarkable, extending even to human anomalies, which were seen as part of the diverse natural world under their dominion. Thankfully, we're focusing on the plants here, which are far less likely to give you existential dread. As you peer into one of these private paradises, you notice the meticulous design. Paths are carefully laid out, perhaps with polished stones or crushed shells, leading to shaded arbors or tranquil pools. Water features, from small fountains to cascading channels, would have been common, not just for irrigation, but for the soothing sound they provided. You might even spot a small aviary, housing brilliantly plumed tropical birds, their calls adding to the symphony of the garden. This wasn't just haphazard planting, it was a deliberate act of creation, a landscape architecture that aimed to impress and delight. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation for these elaborate noble gardens was truly personal enjoyment and aesthetic appreciation, or if their main purpose was to reinforce social hierarchies and project political power through ostentatious displays of wealth and control over nature. Was it about quiet contemplation among the roses? Or about subtly reminding everyone who had enough resources to import a jungle into their backyard? The answer is likely a subtle blend of both. A delicious irony where personal pleasure subtly served political ambition. It's not unlike how your boss might subtly mention their new yacht during a team meeting. The plants themselves told a story of power and reach. A rare cacao tree, its pods heavy with the promise of chocolate, signified access to precious goods from the warm lowlands. A vibrant cochineal cactus, source of a prized red dye, whispered tales of trade routes and tribute. Each specimen was not just a plant, it was a tangible link to the vast network of the Aztec Empire, a testament to the owner's influence and connections. You're seeing a living map of their dominion, meticulously cultivated and pruned. Even the type of gardener employed would reflect status. While commoners tended their own plots, nobles would have specialized gardeners, perhaps even hereditary positions, who possessed deep knowledge of horticulture, propagation, and aesthetics. These were the master landscapers of their day, individuals whose skills were highly valued and who understood the subtle language of botanical diplomacy. They knew which flower conveyed respect, which herb had the most potent medicinal properties, and how to create a visual feast that would leave visitors speechless. The maintenance of such a garden would have been a significant undertaking, requiring a constant supply of water, labor, and new specimens. This alone signaled wealth. You wouldn't have just popped down to the local nursery. Acquiring these plants often involved long, arduous journeys, intricate bartering, or demanding them as part of tribute from newly conquered regions. So, every bloom wasn't just a flower. It was a symbol of military might and economic prowess. You can almost hear the soft rustle of silk garments as a noble strolls through their garden, basking in the quiet admiration of their surroundings. Ultimately, these elite gardens were multi-sensory experiences designed to transport the visitor, to overwhelm them with beauty and fragrance, and to silently communicate the immense resources and influence of their owner. They were places of respite from the demands of urban life. Yes, but they were also stages for subtle performances of power, where every carefully placed stone and every blooming flower played its part. as you imagine the serene beauty and subtle grandeur of these spaces, the quietness of it all deepens, pulling you further into the peaceful slumber you seek. The quiet opulence of the noble gardens now fades slightly as you step into a realm of truly unparalleled grandeur, the Emperor's botanical grandeur. This is where Aztec horticulture reached its zenith, a place where practicality met monumental ambition, and where the natural world was curated not just for sustenance or status, but as a living monument to imperial power and intellectual curiosity. You're entering a space that would make even the most ambitious modern botanist green with envy. A place designed to showcase the very best of the Aztec Empire's reach and mastery over nature. You find yourself transported to places like Huastepec and Huaxtepec, sites outside the immediate confines of Tenochtitlan, but intimately connected to the imperial court. These weren't just large gardens, they were sprawling complexes, often encompassing entire hillsides, valleys, and even natural springs. Imagine walking through an expansive park, but every plant, every tree, every animal has been carefully selected and often transplanted from distant corners of the empire. It's like a colossal, live-in museum, but with the added bonus of being incredibly peaceful. A mainstream historical fact about these imperial gardens is that Emperor Moctezuma, long before his more famous successor Moctezuma I, established the famous botanical garden at Huastepec, which served as a place to cultivate plants from various climatic zones across the empire. This wasn't just a royal hobby. It was a strategic effort to understand and adapt different species, potentially for widespread cultivation or for their medicinal properties. It was, in essence, an ancient agricultural research station, but with a much better view and significantly fewer spreadsheets. Now for a quirky tidbit, the imperial gardens at Oxtepec were so vast and diverse that they included dedicated areas for different types of plants, including a special section for medicinal herbs, and even a simulated high-altitude environment to grow plants native to colder mountain regions. Imagine the logistical nightmare of creating a miniature mountain climate in a tropical lowland, all for the sake of botanical collection. It's the kind of dedication that makes you think. These guys really loved their plants, or at least showing off how much they could control nature. As you wander through these immense botanical realms, you realize the sheer scale of the undertaking. You see terraces carved into hillsides, expertly engineered to prevent erosion and create optimal growing conditions. Water, sourced from pristine springs or elaborate aqueducts, flows through intricate channels and cascades, nourishing every plant. You might spot laborers, not just tending to crops, but meticulously pruning ornamental trees, tending to exotic flowers, or even managing small groves of cacao and vanilla, rare and valuable commodities. Historians still argue whether the primary function of these imperial gardens was primarily scientific and agricultural experimentation, a grand display of political power and tribute, or recreational retreats for the emperors and their court? Were they laboratories for unlocking agricultural secrets, living maps of imperial conquest, or simply the ultimate luxury playgrounds? The answer, like the gardens themselves, is multi-layered. They likely served all these purposes simultaneously, embodying the complex ambitions of the Aztec ruling class. Perhaps it was a place to brainstorm battle plans while admiring a rare bromeliad. The variety of species cultivated within these gardens was astounding. Moctezuma's gardeners would bring back specimens from newly conquered territories, effectively creating a living catalog of the empire's ecological diversity. You might see a plant from the arid northern deserts thriving alongside a lush fern from the humid coastal plains. This wasn't just about collecting pretty things. It was about demonstrating control over vast ecosystems, asserting dominance not just over people, but over nature itself. Each exotic bloom was a silent, fragrant testament to imperial might. Beyond the plants, these gardens often housed collections of exotic animals. You might hear the squawk of a vibrant parrot, the quiet rustle of a jaguar in a secluded enclosure, or see a magnificent quetzal, its iridescent feathers shimmering in the sunlight. These animals, too, were symbols of imperial reach and wealth, brought from distant lands and cared for by specialized keepers. It was a complete ecosystem, a microcosm of the empire's natural resources, all maintained for the pleasure and prestige of the emperor. Imagine trying to get those through customs. The sheer labor involved in creating and maintaining these gardens would have been immense, a testament to the organizational power of the Aztec state. Thousands of individuals, from skilled botanists and engineers to countless laborers, would have been involved in their daily operation. It was a continuous project of creation and upkeep, a living testament to the emperor's ability to command resources and human effort on an unprecedented scale. These were not simply decorative spaces, they were strategic assets, symbols of the empire's wealth, knowledge, and absolute dominion. And as you envision this colossal display of botanical power, the sheer scale of it all begins to blend into the vastness of your dreams, pulling you deeper into a tranquil sleep. As the echoes of imperial botanical grandeur fade into a soft hum, your journey through Aztec horticulture now guides you into the most ethereal aspect of their gardens, their role as sacred spaces and floral offerings. For the Aztecs, a garden wasn't just a place of earthly delights or practical sustenance. It was a profound connection to the divine, a living altar where beauty and spiritual reverence intertwined. Flowers, in particular, transcended mere decoration to become potent symbols, vital elements in rituals, and silent prayers to their gods. You imagine yourself stepping into a temple courtyard, perhaps at the heart of Tenochtitlan. Unlike the bustling market squares, this space is imbued with a palpable sense of reverence. The air is thick with the scent of copal incense, a sweet, resinous smoke that curls towards the heavens. Here. The gardens are meticulously ordered, often laid out in geometric patterns that echo the cosmological beliefs of the Aztecs. You see precise rows of marigolds, their vibrant orange and yellow petals almost glowing, and carefully arranged clusters of cempasúchil, the flower of the dead, so critical in their spiritual practices. A mainstream historical fact is that flowers, especially the marigold cempasúchil, were considered sacred by the Aztecs and were indispensable in religious ceremonies, offerings, and adornments for deities and altars. They believed that the vibrant colors and intoxicating fragrances of these flowers could attract the attention of the gods and serve as conduits for divine communication. It's like having a direct line to the divine, but instead of dialing a number, you're presenting a beautifully arranged bouquet. Now for a quirky tidbit beyond their beauty. Some flowers were believed to possess psychoactive properties, leading to their ceremonial use in rituals where priests or participants sought altered states of consciousness to communicate with the spiritual realm. Imagine a floral arrangement that not only looks good, but also helps you have a deep, philosophical conversation with an ancient deity. It certainly adds a new layer to the concept of spiritual enlightenment through gardening. As you observe a priest, adorned in elaborate regalia, carefully placing an offering of fragrant blooms on an altar, you understand the depth of this connection. The act is performed with a quiet intensity, each flower a silent petition, a gesture of gratitude or supplication. You notice that flowers weren't simply thrown onto an altar. They were often meticulously arranged, woven into garlands, or even crushed to release their potent essence, which was then sprinkled as a fragrant libation. Every petal, every stem, carried significance. Historians still argue whether the elaborate use of flowers in Aztec rituals was primarily an aesthetic choice designed to please the gods with beauty, a symbolic representation of life, death, and renewal, or a practical means to influence divine favor through perceived magical properties. Were the gods truly delighted by a beautiful arrangement? Or did the flower's symbolism and essence serve a deeper, more manipulative purpose in their cosmology? It's likely a complex interplay, a blend of profound respect and strategic spiritual engagement. Perhaps it was a bit of both, much like how we might dress up nicely for an important meeting, part respect, part hoping to impress. The symbolic language of flowers was incredibly rich. The vibrant colors often corresponded to different deities or cosmic directions. Red might symbolize blood or passion, yellow the sun, blue the sky, and water. You're witnessing a form of non-verbal communication, a silent dialogue between humanity and the cosmos expressed through the ephemeral beauty of blossoms. It's a reminder that beauty itself can be a profound form of expression, a language understood across cultures and even across realms. Beyond formal temple settings, flowers permeated daily spiritual life. You might see a commoner offering a single bloom at a household shrine, a small, personal gesture of devotion. Warriors might wear floral wreaths into battle, not just for aesthetic appeal, but as protective charms or a way to honor the gods of war. Even the mundane act of planting a seed could be imbued with spiritual significance, a prayer for abundance and growth. The gardens, therefore, were extensions of their spiritual world, living expressions of their faith. The Aztec poetic tradition, too, is full of references to flowers, often associating them with art, beauty, song, and truth. Flower and song was a common metaphor for poetry and creative expression, suggesting that the most beautiful and profound human endeavors were akin to the transient perfection of a blossom. So, a garden was not just a place for worship, it was a place for inspiration, a fertile ground for the soul as much as for the stomach. As you contemplate this deep, quiet connection between the earth's beauty and the human spirit, you feel your consciousness gently dissolving into the serene silence, the sacred fragrance of history lulling you into a peaceful slumber. With the sacred scents of ceremonial flowers still lingering in your imagination, you now drift toward an aspect of Aztec civilization that often gets overlooked in favor of temples and warriors: their mastery of water management, a hydro-engineering feat. You're about to see how the Aztecs didn't just adapt to their watery environment, they actively controlled it, demonstrating a level of sophistication in hydraulic engineering that rivals many ancient civilizations, and certainly puts your garden hose to shame. Imagine standing on the edge of Lake Texcoco, not just observing the chinampas, but noticing the intricate systems that fed and protected them. You see a network of canals, not just for transportation, but for direct-in water. You spot ingenious dams and sluice gates, simple in their construction, yet remarkably effective in their function. This wasn't just about digging ditches. It was about understanding hydrology, water pressure, and the delicate balance of an entire lacustrine ecosystem. A mainstream historical fact is that the Aztecs built complex aqueduct systems, such as the one that brought fresh spring water from Chapultepec to Tenochtitlan, spanning miles across the lake. This was a critical infrastructure project, providing clean drinking water for the city's vast population and ensuring a consistent supply for their urban gardens and public fountains. It was the ancient equivalent of a city-wide plumbing system, but without the endless leaky pipes and exorbitant repair bills. Now for a quirky tidbit to maintain the ideal water levels and salinity in their vast chinampa fields. The Aztecs sometimes employed a method of dredging by hand, using long poles and nets to scoop mud from the canal bottoms. This mud was then meticulously piled onto the chinampas, not only deepening the canals, but also providing fresh, nutrient-rich soil for the plants. so, their method of maintaining water flow also doubled as a highly effective, natural fertilization program. It's like cleaning your fish tank and getting free organic fertilizer for your house plants at the same time. As you trace the path of water through this ancient landscape, you notice the cleverness of their design. The canals weren't simply stagnant ditches. They were often connected, allowing for a gentle, continuous flow that prevented water from becoming stagnant and kept the chinampas perpetually moist. You might observe specialized workers, akin to ancient hydro-engineers, monitoring water levels and adjusting gates, ensuring that every plot received precisely the right amount of irrigation. This wasn't a set-it-and-forget-it system. It required constant vigilance and skillful management. Historians still argue whether the comprehensive water management system of the Aztecs was primarily developed to support their intensive chinampa agriculture, to provide fresh water for their burgeoning urban population, or to defend the city from the frequent floods of Lake Texcoco. Was it driven by the stomach, the thirst, or the fear of a watery doom? The answer, like the flowing water itself, probably encompasses all these elements. It was a multifaceted problem, and their solutions were equally comprehensive, a testament to their adaptive genius. The construction of the great dikes, like the one built by Nezahualcóyotl, to separate the freshwater and saltwater sections of Lake Texcoco, was an engineering marvel that underpinned their entire society. You imagine the immense cooperative effort required to build such a structure, miles long, made of reeds, stone, and earth. This dike not only protected Tenochtitlan from devastating floods, but also created a freshwater reservoir essential for their agriculture and daily life. It's a monument to their foresight and their ability to organize labor on a truly grand scale. You also see evidence of smaller, localized irrigation techniques. In gardens on dry land, away from the lake, they would have employed methods to channel rainwater or divert small streams to their plots. Terracing on hillsides, though less common in the lake environment, would have also played a role in managing water runoff and preventing soil erosion in other parts of their empire. Every drop of water was precious, and they possessed the knowledge to conserve and utilize it efficiently. The sheer knowledge base required for such water management was immense. They understood seasonal rainfall patterns, the dynamics of lake levels, and the properties of different soils. This wasn't just practical know-how, it was a deep, intuitive understanding of their environment, passed down through generations. They were, in essence, ancient environmental scientists, constantly observing, experimenting, and refining their techniques. And as you envision this intricate web of water flowing through the heart of the Aztec world, a tranquil current washes over you, guiding you gently into a deeper state of relaxation. With the intricate systems of water management gently receded from your awareness, You now shift your focus to the hands-on reality of Aztec horticulture, the everyday garden tools and techniques. This is where the abstract ideas of ingenuity meet the practical, often repetitive, labor of cultivation. You'll discover that while they lacked steel and complex machinery, their tools were perfectly adapted to their environment, and their methods were surprisingly efficient, rooted in generations of empirical knowledge. You imagine yourself standing in a chinampa or a small household garden, observing a gardener at work. Their movements are deliberate, rhythmic, almost meditative. You won't see clanking metal or whirring engines. Instead, you'll hear the soft thud of wood on earth, the gentle swish of woven materials, and the quiet tearing of roots as they prepare the soil. It's a symphony of low-tech efficiency, a testament to human power and clever design. A mainstream historical fact is that the primary agricultural tool for the Aztecs was the coa, a type of digging stick. While seemingly simple, the coa was incredibly versatile, used for breaking up soil, planting seeds, and weeding, making it indispensable for both chinampa and dryland farming. Think of it as their multi-tool, their Swiss Army knife for gardening, capable of doing almost everything you'd need in the field with surprising precision. Now for a quirky tidbit, some coas were weighted with stone tips, allowing them to penetrate tougher soils more easily, effectively making them primitive. Human-powered jackhammers for cultivation. Imagine wielding something that's essentially a glorified, stone-tipped crowbar, expertly digging through packed earth all day. It certainly makes pushing a lawnmower seem like a leisurely stroll in the park. As you watch a farmer use their coa, you notice their technique. They aren't just blindly stabbing the ground. They wield it with skill, leveraging their body weight, precisely turning over soil, or creating neat rows for planting. The design of the coa, often with a broad, flat tip, made it ideal for working the wet, muddy soil of the chinampas, efficiently scooping and moving the rich sediment. It's a tool that looks basic, but requires immense skill and physical strength to master. Historians still argue whether the apparent simplicity of Aztec agricultural tools was a limitation, reflecting a lack of metallurgical advancement or a deliberate choice, as these tools were perfectly suited for their unique environment and sustainable farming practices. Was it a technological plateau or a conscious optimization for their specific needs, where complex machinery would have been cumbersome or even detrimental to the delicate chinampa ecosystem? It's likely a case of intelligent adaptation, where less is more was the guiding principle, especially when more involved dragging heavy plows through soggy terrain. Beyond the coa, you'd observe a range of other simple yet effective tools. Woven baskets, perhaps made from reeds or agave fibers, were essential for carrying soil, harvests, and even for dredging mud from the canals. You might see small hand trowels, probably made of wood or hardened clay, used for delicate tasks like transplanting seedlings. sharpened obsidian blades, incredibly keen, would have been used for pruning, harvesting delicate crops, and even for cutting down larger stalks. The techniques employed were equally sophisticated in their simplicity. Crop rotation was understood implicitly, even if not theorized formally, as different crops replenished different nutrients in the soil. Companion planting was also common, with corn, beans, and squash often grown together, the corn providing a stalk for the beans to climb, the beans fixing nitrogen in the soil, and the squash providing ground cover to suppress weeds and retain moisture. It's a natural synergy, a three-part harmony of growth. You'd also see the constant application of organic fertilizers. Remember that quirky tidbit about human waste. Yes, but also decomposed plant matter, ash from cooking fires, and animal manure were regularly incorporated into the soil, maintaining its incredible fertility year after year. This wasn't just about waste disposal. It was a conscious effort to enrich the land, ensuring sustained productivity without relying on external inputs. They were practicing regenerative agriculture centuries before it became a trendy concept. The process of seed propagation was also highly refined. Farmers would carefully select the best seeds from each harvest, ensuring that future crops would be strong and productive. You might even observe them starting seedlings in small, protected beds before transplanting them to the main fields, a practice that increases survival rates and allows for a head start on the growing season. This meticulous attention to detail, this patient, hands-on approach, was the backbone of their agricultural success. The quiet hum of these ancient techniques, the gentle scrape of tool on earth, slowly lulls you into a deep, peaceful sleep, a testament to the enduring power of simple innovation. As the rhythmic scrapant of the koa and the whisper of ancient planting techniques fade into the background, you're now drifting into a truly vital and perhaps surprisingly sophisticated aspect of Aztec horticulture, their profound knowledge of medicinal plants, ancient apothecaries. For the Aztecs, gardens weren't just food sources or aesthetic statements. They were living pharmacies, repositories of botanical wisdom passed down through generations, offering remedies for everything from a common headache to more serious ailments. You imagine yourself in a specialized garden, perhaps attached to a healer's compound or a temple, where plants are grown not for their beauty or their caloric value, but for their healing properties. The air here is subtly different, carrying the faint, earthy aroma of herbs, some pungent, some sweet. You see rows of plants, meticulously labeled in your mind with their Aztec names, each known for a specific therapeutic effect. This was a science, albeit one deeply intertwined with spiritual beliefs, a testament to empirical observation over centuries. A mainstream historical fact is that the Aztecs possessed an extensive pharmacopoeia. documenting hundreds of medicinal plants and their uses in texts like the Libellus de Medicinalibus Indorum Herbis, known as the Badayanus manuscript, which was compiled shortly after the Spanish conquest. This invaluable document details a vast array of plant-based remedies, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of pharmacology long before Western medicine caught up. It's like having a medieval botanical encyclopedia, but with much more practical, and often effective, advice. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the Aztecs sometimes used substances that would surprise modern sensibilities. For example, they utilized a specific type of fungus found on corn, known as Huitlacoche corn smut, not only as a culinary delicacy, but also for its purported medicinal properties, especially in treating digestive issues. So, next time you see that unusual gray growth on your corn, just remember, ancient Aztecs might have seen it as both a gourmet meal and a natural remedy. Talk about a multi-purpose plant. As you silently observe, you might see a Tlamatini, a wise person or healer, carefully harvesting leaves, roots, or flowers. Their movements are precise, showing an intimate knowledge of each plant's properties and the optimal time for collection. They understood the concept of dosage, how to prepare different parts of the plant, and even how various plants could be combined for synergistic effects. This wasn't just folklore, it was practical, tested knowledge, refined over centuries of trial and error. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness of many Aztec plant-based remedies was primarily due to their actual biochemical properties, or if a significant component was also attributable to the placebo effect, spiritual beliefs, and the overall holistic approach of Aztec medicine. Was it the active compounds in the plant, or the patient's belief in the ritual surrounding its application, that truly brought about healing the answer? As is often the case with ancient medical practices, is likely a combination of both, a powerful synergy between the physical and the spiritual. You'd see a wide array of plants, each with its designated purpose. The sap of the agave plant was used for wound dressing and antiseptic properties. The bark of the copalxocotl tree provided a resin used as an anti-inflammatory. They even understood the analgesic properties of certain plants, used them to alleviate pain. Imagine having a natural ibuprofen growing right in your backyard, with no plastic packaging or questionable side effects. The training of Aztec healers involved rigorous apprenticeships, where knowledge was passed down orally, reinforced by practical experience. They learned to identify plants, understand their life cycles, and recognize the specific symptoms they could alleviate. This wasn't just about memorizing recipes. It was about developing a deep, intuitive understanding of the natural world and its healing potential. These medicinal gardens were often found not just in private compounds, but also in public spaces, accessible to the wider community. Some argue that larger cities had communal apothecaries, similar to modern botanical gardens, where a vast collection of medicinal plants was maintained for public health. This widespread access to natural remedies underscores the Aztec commitment to community well-being and their deep reliance on the plant kingdom for health. The quiet whisper of these ancient remedies, the knowledge held in every leaf and root, creates a calming blanket, drawing you deeper into a tranquil, undisturbed sleep. Having explored the practical healing power of Aztec plants, you now shift your focus to something that speaks directly to the soul garden aesthetics, a symphony of senses. For the Aztecs, a garden was not merely functional, it was a carefully composed experience, designed to delight the eye, soothe the ear, please the nose, and calm the mind. You're about to discover that their understanding of beauty in nature was profound, transforming mere plots of land into living works of art. You imagine yourself stepping into a secluded courtyard garden within a noble residence, or perhaps a section of a larger imperial estate. The harsh sunlight is softened by the canopy of trees, creating dappled shadows on the ground. The air, previously thick with the scent of practical herbs, now carries a delicate perfume of exotic blooms. You don't just see colors, you perceive carefully chosen palettes, harmonious combinations that speak of deliberate design. It's a sensory balm, a place designed for quiet contemplation and appreciation. A mainstream historical fact is that Aztec garden design emphasized symmetry, order, and the integration of natural elements with architectural features. They frequently incorporated reflective pools, patterned pathways, and carefully placed stones and sculptures to create a sense of balance and harmony, transforming green spaces into extensions of their structured worldview. It was like bringing the organized beauty of their temples right into their personal retreats. Now, for a quirky tidbit, some Aztec gardens included structures known as tepojualcalco, or echo houses, which were designed to amplify sounds, creating an acoustic experience that added another layer to the garden's sensory appeal. Imagine sitting in a special pavilion where the gentle murmur of a nearby stream or the chirping of birds was subtly enhanced, creating a surround sound nature experience. It makes your noise-canceling headphones seem a bit basic. As you move through these aesthetic spaces, you notice the thoughtful placement of every element. Trees are strategically positioned to provide shade and visual depth. Flowering shrubs are arranged not just by color, but by scent and bloom time, ensuring a continuous display of beauty throughout the year. You see carefully pruned hedges form as green walls, creating intimate nooks and framing views. It's clear that the Aztec gardeners were also skilled landscape artists, masters of shaping nature to human desire. Historians still argue whether the aesthetic principles guiding Aztec garden design were primarily derived from their cosmological beliefs and sacred geometries, influenced by pre-existing Mesoamerican traditions, or if they were an independent evolution driven by a universal human appreciation for beauty and order. Was it about mirroring the cosmos in miniature, adopting designs from older cultures, or simply a natural progression of human artistic expression? It's likely a tapestry woven from all these threads, creating a unique aesthetic language that resonated deeply with their culture. The use of water in these gardens was not just for irrigation. Remember that sophisticated water management. It was also for aesthetic and auditory pleasure. Reflective pools captured the sky, creating a sense of expansiveness. Small cascades and trickling fountains provided a soothing background sound, masking the distant city noise and enhancing the tranquility. The movement of water itself became part of the visual spectacle, a shimmering, living element. You can almost feel the refreshing spray on your skin as you lean over a cool, clear pool. Beyond the plants and water, sculptures and carvings were often integrated into the garden design. These might be representations of deities, mythical creatures, or symbols of fertility and abundance, linking the natural beauty of the garden to their spiritual world. Paths were not just functional. They were often lined with colorful stones or shells, creating intricate patterns that guided the eye and encouraged a leisurely stroll. Every detail contributed to the overall experience. Even the humble butterfly would have been considered part of the garden's living aesthetic. Some gardens might have featured specific plants known to attract these delicate creatures, adding flashes of vibrant color and a sense of dynamic life to the static beauty of the flora. The overall effect was one of harmonious balance, a deliberate crafting of nature to evoke peace, wonder, and a profound connection to the ordered beauty of the universe. As you absorb this symphony of senses, the gentle beauty and quiet artistry of these ancient spaces lull you deeper into a peaceful and undisturbed sleep. As the aesthetically pleasing gardens and their soothing echoes gently recede, you now encounter the less manicured, but equally fascinating aspect of Aztec green spaces, the animal inhabitants, from birds to bugs. You'll discover that Aztec gardens weren't just botanical showcases. They were living ecosystems, shared by a diverse array of creatures. Some welcome, some tolerated, and some undoubtedly considered pests. It's a reminder that even in meticulously planned spaces, nature finds a way to introduce its own wild charm. You imagine yourself in a large garden, perhaps one of the imperial estates or a substantial Chinampa field. The air hums with unseen life. You hear the rustle of leaves that isn't just the wind, the buzz of insects, and the distinct calls of birds. This isn't a sterile environment, it's a vibrant, interconnected web of life where plants provide shelter and sustenance, and animals play their roles, both helpful and occasionally destructive. It's a natural drama unfolding in miniature, all around you. A mainstream historical fact is that birds were highly valued in Aztec culture, not just for their beauty and song, but also for their feathers, which were used in elaborate costumes, headdresses, and intricate feather mosaics. consequently. Many Aztec gardens, especially imperial ones, included aviaries specifically designed to house and breed colorful tropical birds like quetzals, macaws, and hummingbirds. Imagine living next to a royal bird sanctuary, filled with the squawks and chirps of 1,000 vibrant voices. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the Aztecs also raised specific types of insects, like cochineal beetles on nopal cacti, primarily for their incredibly valuable red dye. This wasn't about pest control, it was about cultivating a tiny, crawling source of wealth. So, while you might spray for bugs, the Aztecs were carefully tending to them, recognizing their immense economic value. It gives bug farming a whole new, much more luxurious meaning. As you quietly observe, you notice how various creatures fit into this garden ecosystem. Hummingbirds flit from flower to flower, acting as crucial pollinators, their tiny wings a blur of motion. Butterflies, their wings adorned with intricate patterns, dance through the sunlight, drawn by the nectar-rich blooms. These were welcome guests, symbols of beauty and fertility, essential for the health of the garden. You might even feel a tiny, ticklish sensation as an imagined bee buzzes past your ear, diligently collecting pollen. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs had a comprehensive understanding of ecological relationships, such as pollination and pest control, or if their practices were primarily based on generations of empirical observation and practical experience. Did they grasp the scientific why behind the interactions, or simply the practical what works? It's likely a blend of both, a deep, intuitive knowledge of nature's rhythms, honed through constant interaction and reliance on the land for survival. Of course, not all inhabitants were beneficial. You might spot evidence of rodents nibbling on roots, or larger birds attempting to raid newly planted seeds. Pest control, for the Aztecs, was often a hands-on affair. They might have used natural deterrents, companion planting to repel certain insects, or simply diligent human effort to remove pests by hand. There were no chemical sprays, just a constant, watchful eye on the delicate balance of their living spaces. Beyond the wild or semi-wild inhabitants, some gardens might have included small enclosures for domesticated animals. Ducks and turkeys, important sources of protein, might have foraged in certain areas, their presence helping with pest control and providing natural fertilizer. Even certain types of dogs were kept, sometimes for their meat, but also as companions. And they undoubtedly enjoyed the cool shade of a garden during a hot day. The presence of these animals, from the smallest ant to the largest bird, added to the dynamic, living quality of the Aztec garden. It was a space teeming with life, a microcosm of the abundant natural world that surrounded their island city. The sounds, the rustle of leaves, the chirping of crickets, the distant call of a heron from the canals would have formed a continuous, soothing soundscape, a natural lullaby that gently pulls you deeper into a serene and dreamless sleep. This quiet symphony of life was as much a part of the garden as the plants themselves. As the buzzing of ancient insects and the calls of exotic birds in the Aztec gardens gently fade, you now turn your attention to the silent, tireless figures who made all this verdant beauty and sustenance possible, the gardeners themselves, and their gardener's daily rhythm. You'll gain a quiet appreciation for the continuous, often repetitive, labor that underpinned the Aztec Empire's agricultural success, a rhythm dictated by the sun, the seasons, and the relentless demands of the plants. You imagine yourself waking with the first hint of dawn on the lake, the cool morning mist still clinging to the chinampas. You see a gardener, perhaps a commoner tending their family plot, or a specialized worker heading to a noble's estate. Their movements are unhurried but purposeful, each action a practiced response to centuries of accumulated knowledge. There's no frantic rush, just the steady, unwavering pace of someone deeply connected to the earth. A mainstream historical fact is that Aztec agriculture, particularly the intensive chinampa system, required continuous, year-round labor due to its high productivity and multiple harvest cycles, unlike seasonal farming in many other parts of the world. Aztec gardeners had to be constantly engaged in planting, weeding, irrigating, and harvesting almost every day of the year. It was the ultimate 9 to 5, or rather, sun-up to sundown, commitment, with no weekends off. Now for a quirky tidbit to maximize efficiency and minimize travel across the sprawling chinampa fields. Some gardeners would construct small, temporary shelters, or even live on their chinampas during peak growing seasons. Imagine setting up a tiny, reed-thatched hut right in the middle of your cornfield, essentially camping out to ensure your crops were safe and sound. It's extreme dedication, or maybe just a brilliant way to avoid a long commute by canoe. As you observe the daily routine, you see the first tasks often involve irrigation. Even with the natural moisture of the chinampas, supplemental watering was often needed, especially for young seedlings or during dry spells. You might see gardeners meticulously scooping water from the canals with gourds or small buckets, carefully distributing it around the base of plants. This wasn't a job for the impatient. It required precision and an understanding of each plant's specific needs. Historians still argue whether the division of labor in Aztec gardening was strictly hierarchical, with nobles simply overseeing and commoners doing all the physical work, or if there was more communal sharing of tasks and knowledge across social strata. Was it a clear master-servant dynamic, or a more interdependent system where practical skills were valued regardless of social standing? The reality was likely a complex interplay, with the elite commanding labor, but perhaps also engaging in gardening as a leisure activity or for ceremonial purposes. Following irrigation, weeding would be a constant, almost meditative task. In the fertile, damp soil of the chinampas, weeds grew rapidly, competing with the crops for nutrients and sunlight. You see gardeners, often kneeling, carefully pulling unwanted plants by hand, or using small, specialized tools to loosen the soil around their crops. This continuous attention kept the gardens pristine and allowed the cultivated plants to thrive. It's like a never-ending battle against botanical interlopers. A quiet war waged daily. Planting and transplanting were also integral parts of the rhythm, with multiple harvests per year. As one crop finished, another would be ready to go into the ground. You'd see gardeners carefully preparing new beds, poking holes with their koa, and gently placing seeds or young seedlings into the rich earth. This continuous cycle of renewal ensured a steady supply of food, a green conveyor belt of sustenance. As the sun climbs higher, the work might shift to pest management. We've already seen the animals that shared the gardens, and some of them were definitely not welcome. You might observe gardeners carefully inspecting leaves for insect infestations, perhaps hand-picking pests or using natural deterrents like ash or pungent plant extracts. This was an ongoing vigilance, a constant defense of their precious crops against the appetites of the natural world. Finally, the reward for all this labor harvesting. You'd see the gentle plucking of ripe chilies, the careful cutting of corn cobs, the gathering of squash. Each harvest was a moment of satisfaction, a tangible outcome of their tireless efforts. The produce would then be loaded onto canoes or carried in baskets, destined for market, for the family's cooking pot, or for the emperor's table. The daily rhythm of the Aztec gardener was one of quiet diligence, a dance with nature that required patience, physical endurance, and deep knowledge. It was a life lived in tune with the seasons, the soil, and the sun, a constant reminder of the fundamental connection between human effort and the bounty of the earth. As you contemplate this steady, ancient rhythm, the gentle hum of historical labor guides you deeper into a tranquil and refreshing sleep. Having observed the quiet, daily rhythms of the Aztec gardener, you now shift your perspective to how these vibrant green spaces extended beyond individual plots and into the heart of communal life, becoming stages for garden festivals and public spectacles. For the Aztecs, the beauty and bounty of their gardens were not just for private enjoyment. They were woven into the very fabric of their celebrations, expressions of gratitude, and displays of collective identity. Imagine the city of Tenochtitlan on a festival day. The air is no longer just filled with the quiet hum of agricultural labor. It's vibrant with music, the scent of copal incense, and the excited chatter of crowds. You see garlands of flowers adorning every doorway, elaborate floral arrangements decorating public plazas, and perhaps even canoes laden with fresh blooms gliding through the canals, destined for temples or grand ceremonies. The entire city seems to burst forth in a riot of color, much of it sourced directly from the tirelessly tended gardens. A mainstream historical fact is that numerous Aztec festivals throughout the year were deeply connected to agricultural cycles, giving thanks for bountiful harvests and ensuring future fertility. Flowers played a central role in these celebrations, used as offerings to deities, adornments for participants, and integral parts of ritual dances and processions. It was a yearly calendar driven by the sun and the soil, with the garden as the guest of honor at every significant event. Now for a quirky tidbit during some festivals. Participants would wear elaborate costumes made entirely or partially from fresh flowers and leaves, creating living, ephemeral works of art that would slowly wilt throughout the day. Imagine putting hours of effort into a stunning outfit, knowing it would be compost by sundown. It's the ultimate statement in fleeting beauty, a precursor to modern avant-garde fashion, but with a much more earthy and biodegradable outcome. As you silently observe one of these festivals, perhaps in honor of Xochiquetzal, the goddess of flowers, beauty, and fertility, you notice the sheer abundance of floral decorations. Market stalls overflow with various blossoms, their vibrant colors reflecting the Aztec appreciation for aesthetic richness. People, from commoners to nobles, adorn themselves with floral necklaces, armbands, and intricate headpieces. It's a joyful, sensory overload, a stark contrast to the quiet discipline of daily gardening. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of flowers in Aztec public festivals was primarily a genuine expression of religious devotion and gratitude, a calculated way to showcase the empire's agricultural prosperity and access to exotic resources, or a form of social cohesion, uniting the populace in shared communal experiences. Was it pure piety, strategic propaganda, or just a really good excuse for a party? It was likely all three, demonstrating the interconnectedness of their religious, political, and social spheres. Processions would weave through the city, often carrying effigies of deities adorned with countless flowers. The rhythmic beat of drums and the haunting melodies of flutes would accompany dancers whose movements mimicked the swaying of plants or the flight of birds. These weren't just performances, they were acts of worship, a communal dialogue with the forces of nature that governed their lives and harvests. Even the ball game, a central public spectacle, had connections to the garden's bounty. While ostensibly a sporting event, it carried deep ritualistic significance, often involving offerings. You can imagine the victor of a match perhaps receiving a garland of prized flowers, or a ceremonial offering of a rare bloom being made before a game commenced, linking the physical prowess of the athletes to the fertility of the earth. These festivals provided moments of joyous release and collective identity, reinforcing the cultural values tied to abundance, fertility, and the deep respect for the natural world. The garden, through its beautiful offerings, provided the visual and aromatic backdrop for these celebrations. allowing the entire populace to participate in a shared experience of gratitude and hope for continued prosperity. It was a powerful reminder that the quiet labor of the gardener ultimately blossomed into the vibrant life of the community. As the sounds of ancient festivities swirl around you, the joyous energy slowly transmutes into a gentle calm, leading you deeper into a peaceful and undisturbed sleep. With the joyous echoes of Aztec festivals still softly reverberating, you now sense a chilling shift in the historical atmosphere. The vibrant green of the gardens begins to acquire a somber hue as you confront the profound impact of the Spanish arrival gardens under siege. This is the chapter where external forces violently disrupt a finely tuned ecosystem, threatening not just the people, but the very horticultural traditions that sustained them. You imagine yourself in Tenochtitlan, but it's no longer the bustling, self-sufficient metropolis you've observed. A strange tension hangs in the air, a sense of foreboding. You see unfamiliar ships on the lake, their sails alien against the familiar skyline. The quiet rhythm of daily life is replaced by an unnervous anticipation, soon to be shattered by the cacophony of conflict and cultural clash. The gardens, once symbols of life and abundance, become silent witnesses to a devastating transformation. A mainstream historical fact is that the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors in 1519, led by Hernán Cortés, marked the beginning of the end for the independent Aztec Empire. The subsequent siege of Tenochtitlan, combined with the devastating effects of European diseases like smallpox, led to the collapse of the Aztec civilization and a massive loss of life and cultural knowledge. This wasn't just a change of guard. It was an apocalyptic event for the indigenous peoples, and their gardens were caught in the crossfire. Now for a quirky tidbit. If we can call anything from this period quirky without being deeply uncomfortable, while the Spanish were initially captivated by the beauty and productivity of the Chinampas, they largely failed to understand or properly maintain the complex system after the conquest. Their European agricultural practices, often less suited to the lacustrine environment, gradually led to the decline and neglect of many Chinampa fields, simply because they didn't grasp the intricate hydroengineering and continuous labor required. It's like buying a supercar and then trying to fill it with diesel, because that's what your old pickup truck used. As you observe the city during the siege, you see the gardens, once sources of nourishment, becoming targets. Chinampas are damaged during skirmishes. Irrigation systems are disrupted, and the meticulous daily rhythm of cultivation is utterly broken. The very beauty of the gardens becomes a liability, as they offer no defense against steel weapons and gunpowder. You might imagine the heartbreaking sight of once thriving plots turning barren, their carefully managed fertility slowly slipping away without the constant, knowing hands of their Aztec tenders. Historians still argue whether the destruction of Aztec gardens and agricultural systems was a deliberate strategy by the Spanish to cripple the indigenous population. an unavoidable consequence of warfare, or largely a result of cultural misunderstanding and neglect following the conquest. Was it an act of agricultural warfare, collateral damage, or simply incompetence born of cultural ignorance? The truth is likely a combination of all these factors. A tragic confluence that led to the decline of one of the most efficient food production systems in history. The introduction of new European crops and livestock also began to transform the landscape. Wheat and barley, unfamiliar to the lacustrine environment, were introduced, often at the expense of traditional Aztec staples. Sheep, cattle, and horses, beasts unknown to the pre-Columbian Americas, grazed on traditional fields, disrupting fragile ecosystems and further altering the agricultural practices. You can almost hear the bewildered silence of the Aztec farmers, witnessing their finely tuned system being replaced by alien methods that often proved unsustainable in their unique environment. Beyond the physical destruction, there was a profound loss of knowledge. The oral traditions, the detailed understanding of medicinal plants, the centuries of empirical observation that informed Aztec horticulture, were largely disregarded or actively suppressed by the new colonial order. The sophisticated botanical gardens of the emperors, once repositories of vast knowledge, fell into disrepair or were repurposed, their scientific value unrecognized by the conquerors. It was a cultural lobotomy, severing a vital connection to their past and their sustainable future. The decline was not immediate. Of course, some chinampas persisted, and elements of Aztec gardening adapted under colonial rule, particularly in rural areas. But the grand scale, the systematic integration into urban life, and the reverence for gardens as status symbols and sacred spaces largely faded. The vibrant green heart of Tenochtitlan, once a testament to human ingenuity and harmony with nature, began to wither under the weight of conquest and cultural imposition. As you witness this historical turning point, the quiet tragedy of lost knowledge settles over you, gently guiding you into a deep, reflective sleep. As the somber echoes of conquest and the decline of ancient horticultural traditions fade, you finally arrive at the present, discerning the echoes of green modern legacy. Even after centuries of change, the ingenuity of Aztec gardens, particularly the chinampas, hasn't entirely vanished. Instead, it lives on, subtly influencing contemporary agriculture and urban planning, a quiet testament to their enduring brilliance. You're about to see how threads of that ancient wisdom still weave through the modern landscape, often in places you'd least expect. You imagine yourself in the bustling, sprawling megacity that is modern Mexico City, built directly atop the ancient foundations of Tenochtitlan. The vast lake, once a shimmering expanse, is now largely drained, replaced by concrete and buildings. Yet, even here, in certain southern districts like Xochimilco, you find remnants of that aquatic past. You're gliding on a colorful trajinera, a traditional flat-bottomed boat through narrow canals, and suddenly, you see them familiar rectangular plots of land, separated by water. These are the last surviving Chinampas, living relics of a bygone era. A mainstream historical fact is that the Chinampas of Xochimilco are now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for their unique historical and ecological significance. While greatly reduced in number compared to their Aztec heyday, these remaining Chinampas continue to be cultivated, providing fresh produce for Mexico City and serving as vital ecological zones for migrating birds and local wildlife. It's like finding a living fossil, still doing its job, right in the middle of a bustling metropolis. Now for a quirky tidbit. Despite being an ancient technology, the productivity of the remaining Chinampas in Xochimilco is still remarkably high, often outperforming modern conventional farming methods in terms of yield per square meter, especially for certain vegetables. Imagine your local urban farm, using all the latest tech, being outproduced by a method invented over 500 years ago using only mud and manual labor. It's a humbling thought, isn't it? As you observe these contemporary Chinampas, you notice the familiar rhythm, albeit on a smaller scale. Farmers still use long poles to dredge mud, enriching the soil. They still plant in raised beds, and they still rely on the constant presence of water for irrigation. The vegetables grown here, radishes, lettuces, Swiss chard, and herbs find their way to local markets, carrying with them a taste of ancient agricultural wisdom. It's a living link to a profound past, a quiet defiance against the relentless march of modernization. Historians still argue whether the preservation of the Xochimilco Chinampas is primarily due to conscious efforts to maintain cultural heritage, their continued economic viability in a niche market, or simply a stubborn resilience of a system perfectly adapted to its environment. Is it history, buff preservation, good business sense, or just an agricultural system that refuses to die? It's likely a fortunate confluence of all these factors, allowing these floating gardens to survive against incredible odds. Beyond the visible Chinampas, the legacy of Aztec gardening also subtly influences modern Mexican agriculture. The emphasis on certain native crops, corn, beans, squash, chili peppers remain central to the Mexican diet, a direct continuity from Aztec times. Many traditional farming practices, passed down through generations in rural communities, still echo the techniques perfected by Aztec gardeners, even if they're not explicitly recognized as such. The knowledge, though fractured, endures. Furthermore, the concept of urban green spaces, of integrating nature into city planning, finds a distant but undeniable ancestor in Tenochtitlan. While modern cities grapple with concrete jungles and food deserts, the Aztecs lived in a city that was a garden. This historical precedent, though perhaps not explicitly studied by every urban planner, offers a powerful, albeit quiet, Lesson in Sustainable Urban Living. It's a silent whisper from the past, suggesting a greener, more integrated future. The Aztec legacy isn't just about ancient ruins or fascinating myths. It's also about a practical, elegant solution to feeding a dense population in a challenging environment. It's a story of adaptability, ingenuity, and a deep respect for the land and water. As you reflect on these enduring echoes of green, feeling the quiet determination of past gardeners still shaping the present, the final threads of your historical journey gently unravel. Now, allow yourself to slowly drift, feeling the soft embrace of history, the ancient canals, the vibrant flowers, the quiet, persistent work of the Aztec gardeners. Let these images blur, softening at the edges. You've journeyed through time, witnessed ingenuity and beauty, and now it's time for your mind to rest. The sounds of the past are fading, becoming a gentle hum, a whisper of dreams. The world of ancient gardens is receding, leaving only calm and quiet. There's nothing left to do, nowhere left to be, but here, now. Sink in deeper, deeper, into the stillness,